And we're pleased to welcome Avi Meyerstein, founder and president of the Alliance for Middle East Peace, an umbrella group that brings together advocates for a two-state solution from both the Israeli and the Palestinian side. Thanks for being with us here on
Thanks for having me.
First off, your reaction to what we just heard from our correspondent. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the fighting in Lebanon.
It's utterly tragic, and people on both sides of the border, frankly, are waking up every morning and not knowing what's going to happen that day, much less a few days' time. So many displaced from their homes, so many experiencing shelling, and constantly facing this risk of regional escalation between Israel and Iran, all tied in together. So this is not a place where almost anybody wants to be. And we can only hope that the diplomacy will unlock some paths for de-escalating and eventually letting people return to their homes and some sense of security.
Some sense of security. October the 7th, 2023, when that Hamas-led attack happened, caught the world by surprise. Israel's effectively been at war ever since.
And on many fronts. And it may have caught the world by surprise, but I'll tell you that through our grassroots networks, and I was living there for a while leading up to that, we were trying to ring the alarm bells that the situation only had the appearance of stability. And the fact that so many of these localized conflicts, whether it's the border with Lebanon, whether it's the regional conflict with Iran, and certainly at the core of it all, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, while those things remain unresolved, then any sort of stability is just an illusion. And I think now we've been living for almost 3 years in the worst case scenario. We hope it doesn't get much worse. But really, hopefully people have looked over the edge and seen that it's time to pull back.
It's difficult to get the world's attention these days because with everything else going on, in particular, the standoff between the United States and Iran, of late, there's been increased violence in the West Bank. There's been also a push, an Israeli government tender for more than 3,400 housing units in the area. It's called the E1 area. That sounds a bit technical. But it effectively would, some say, seal the fate of the Palestinians.
It certainly will make any attempts to resolve the conflict along the lines that most people keep coming back to, because it really seems to be the main solution on the table, a two-state solution. Whether it's a confederated two-state solution or truly two states side by side, if you break that contiguity in territory, it makes it very difficult for the Palestinians to have a state. And so then where does that leave us? That leaves us with the present status quo just continuing indefinitely. And that's certainly not something that people prefer.
How do you get the world's attention? Again, this is 1 billion shekels the government's pushing this Thursday. They're doing it ahead of the elections that are coming up in the fall. How do you get the world's attention on this?
Well, I can tell you what we're doing in civil society. I mean, I'm actually in Paris because tomorrow we have a peak event that we're doing with the French government and others, bringing 150 Israeli and Palestinian civil society leaders. These are the people on the ground who are actually working for solutions and figuring out where their two peoples and communities can reach a path forward that's shared. So we're bringing those folks to Paris because they're doing the work on the ground, and their voices need to be in the rooms where the decisions are made. And with the G7 coming up in France in a few days, they're going to have a chance to talk with and deliver concrete proposals to diplomats who are participating in the G7 with ideas about how we actually break out of this frozen status quo where we can't even manage to maintain a ceasefire, much more move beyond to reconstruction, political solutions, and conflict resolution. Those ideas need to come from the ground. And so getting attention means having events like that, really integrating civil society into the diplomatic process.
Now, a year ago, your organization was one of those that accompanied that Franco-Saudi push to get more countries to recognize a state of Palestine at the United Nations. Has that had the effects you've desired?
Well, we've learned since just how important that civil society interconnection with the diplomats was to moving that process forward, to keeping everybody, the French, the Saudis, and all of the other partners in the room. And frankly, a year ago, we didn't even have the Gaza ceasefire. As imperfect and unfortunately violent as it is, everything was much worse before. And so I think we're grateful that that interaction was able to help support getting to that ceasefire, and we've been working ever since to really try to cement it. I would say that what really made a big difference, because the New York Declaration that 142 countries supported out of that French-Saudi process, it raised some eyebrows in some corners because they felt that it was only focused on a Palestinian state. That was a core part of it, but it was really about recognizing both the rights and needs of Israelis and Palestinians. Bringing the voices from the ground helped ensure that.
Okay, so let's talk about carrots and sticks then, when it comes to the West Bank. This week, France and some other countries announcing new travel bans, including on the finance minister, who hails from that far-right settler movement, and on violent West Bank settlers. Do those kinds of announcements have an impact?
I think it's felt on the ground by the people who are targeted.
They say we don't care. We don't even go to those countries.
They seem to take notice. It gets their attention. How much it constrains their behavior, I guess only time will tell. But I think the real trick here, actually, is how do you navigate this fine balance where you're targeting bad actors and you're at the same time not pushing away moderate majorities who you want to actually engage. And so targeted sanctions and things of that sort have to strike that balance so you're really hitting the people that you're trying to hit. It can get really complicated when people perceive it, and certainly when it's true, that it actually is much broader than that, and it's hitting people beyond those actors.
Now, your message, is it getting through to Israelis? What are the carrots that you can offer? And can those be heard in the din of, again, this standoff with Iran? The opposition is more than happy that they're taking on Iran, and can it be heard in terms of, again, trying to find some kind of a common ground? Is this the moment to be talking about a common ground when there's an election coming up in Israel?
This is a moment where people in an election have to make choices. They need alternatives to be able to make choices. And so it's critical, actually, that we're talking about alternatives to this bloody status quo. What we find when we talk to Israelis, actually, like Palestinians, is that even though when you go into a coffee shop and you ask people what they think, or you turn on the TV, you get a sort of typical conventional wisdom. No, two states can't happen, there's no partner, and so on and so forth. We have to live by the sword. We've been doing polling for the last year. We asked Israelis 4 times in 12 months about a regional peace agreement that includes a Palestinian state. And just 3 weeks ago, the latest numbers were 74% who said they would support or accept it. So we're hearing that it's something that it needs to break into the public discourse. Just about 3-4 weeks ago, I was in Tel Aviv at the largest expo center, and there were 5,000 Israelis gathered to really launch an effort to get these ideas out there, to be pushing for an alternative and a more secure future. And the best part about being in that room was there were so many young people who've never actually seen a leader lead toward peace in their lifetimes, who were thirsty for this. So I think there's a lot of material to work with there.
It's an age of echo chambers. We saw here in France recently indignation over a acclaimed Israeli filmmaker, Nadav Lapid, who had to cancel doing a masterclass at a film festival in Marseille. He's an outspoken critic of Israel's prime minister, and yet he had to bow out because of pressure. Your thoughts on, again, how you can get to the point of dialogue when somebody who's open to that dialogue is prevented or discouraged from appearing at an event?
It's a frustrating consequence and reality of such a bloody moment where people's passions are so stirred. Obviously, it's not accomplishing anything. I mean, it may feel good to people who are protesting in that way, and certainly everyone has the right to peaceful protest. But I think that the conflict and the people on the ground would be so much better off if all of us around the world were thinking of ways that we could actually work together to support them in a constructive path forward, rather than using this as a way to import the conflict into our own communities and be divided by it. They really need our help over there. And so in that sense, I'm not sure that this is advancing the cause that people thought.
I want to thank you very much, Avi Meyerstein, for being with us here on France 24. Your next step is meeting with, again, those G7 foreign ministers, it is?
There'll be foreign ministers, deputy foreign ministers, and we'll be celebrating this big news that there's a new international fund announced today from the UK, Canada, and Australia. So big steps forward.
An international fund for?
Israeli-Palestinian peace, to really support and scale up that civil society work so we really do reach all corners of society.
Many thanks for that, Avi Meyerstein. Should point out that sister station Radio France International has objected to the expelling of their correspondent Alice Froissart from Israel. No official reason has been given.